Hi, so I wanted to talk about my direct experience with AI and how casual it is in lying to your face and providing you with genuine misinformation, because obviously that word is bandied around and they cast their magic spells by using these words, and it's disinformation, misinformation, and usually that means you're correct, and the establishment don't like that, so they do everything they can to put the ick on you. Basically, that's what those words are for. But AI is basically lying to your face and presenting things to you as fact that are not. And this is my direct experience of that. So yesterday, I was having a group chat with some friends that I play some music with, and we were talking about songs that we might like to add to the repertoire and play. And one of those had been Imagine by John Lennon. And because the feeling was, well, no one can really cover that song authentically, you just look like a lame duck, and people have kind of had enough of that song because it's been, it's probably been in adverts. I haven't seen any, but it's probably been in adverts. It's been used and abused by politicians, and it's come rather than to be like, I think, what it was intended to be, which was the plea of a gentle dreamer trapped in the materialist world, but trying to use the material world to survive, to hang on to, in order to at least have a foundation of safety, in order to then make art. That's what I assume it to be, as well as the general message of like, peace, please don't bomb each other and spend all this money that you tax people for on killing everybody. That would be the implication, and that's something I very much agree with. But the song has kind of come to mean like, hope and dreams and all that kind of sloganeering, and all of that stuff is just basically like, in the age that we are now of the WEF, it's kind of disarming in the worst possible way, because it's always from propagandists, and their dream seems to be a communist hellscape where imagine no possessions. It's just they don't tell you the asterisk means we own everything and you rent it. So we have a subscription society, and 99.9% of people have nothing, no property, no private ownership. It's just owned by the top of the top, who will tell you what to do, and if you don't like it, they turn off your bank account, and if they really don't like it, they turn off your food token. And that's kind of the society that the WEF is certainly wanting us to live in, and I disagree with it beyond beyond anything else I think that's on the table at the moment. I don't want that. I don't agree with extremes of wealth. I don't think we need to live in a world of extreme billionaire wealth and extreme dirt poor poverty. But I do think all of it can be greatly helped if there are individual people who can own or aspire to own basic things like a home, which shouldn't be up for grabs, and governments are not helping people do that. They're making it harder. And these economic magicians are not making it easier for people to do that. They're making it harder. It's baked into the system. Anyway, the argument between us in the group was that, we all agreed on it basically, but the argument that we had against the song was that, are we comfortable singing this message of Imagine No Possessions? Obviously, we're framing it in a song. The song is a work of art. Art is a kind of bubble where hypocrisies and, ironies and paradoxes all can kind of dwell in, and it's better that they are in art than in the real world, so to speak. But the real world contradiction of John Lennon is so enormous because he was so wealthy and he deserved every cent of it, but his enormous wealth, which he continued to hold on to and keep buying houses and keep spending money, and his message in that particular song, it is a contradiction that grates. And we were saying, well, maybe we could rewrite the lyrics in it and present our own verse at the end of it. Maybe we skip that verse. Maybe we just accept it. That's what he meant. take it from there. But I wanted to know a little bit more about it all. So I asked Grok, the AI, and I said to it, did Lennon ever speak about these charges of hypocrisy that were levelled at him because of that song? Did he ever comment on it? And it said yes, he did. And I will read to you what it answered me. Grok said, in a 1980 Playboy interview, Lennon acknowledged the irony, saying, quote, in quote marks, quote, the idea of Imagine is easier to sing about than to live. I don't pretend to live like a saint. I'm a rich man and I'm not ashamed of it, but I'm asking people to think about a world where we don't need all this stuff to be happy. Close quote. Now that sounds like the idiom of John Lennon, stuff. I'm a rich man, I'm not ashamed. You can imagine him sat there saying it. It's presented to you as a direct quote from the horse's mouth, not as a summation of his views on the matter. It's a direct quote. And elsewhere in the answer, I'll read the full answer to you, but it said, elsewhere in the answer it includes a genuine quote, just to make this even more absurd and objectionable. So the quote has ended from John Lennon, allegedly, and then Grok continues, he admitted his wealth earned through the Beatles' success and solo career put him at odds with the song's ideals, but argued the message was about collective imagination, not personal perfection. Lennon was candid about his contradictions. In the same interview he noted, quote, I'm not going to live in a cave to prove I'm sincere. Now that is a genuine John Lennon quote, and it is from the Playboy interview. But I read, under great duress, I assure you, I read that Playboy interview. It's free, it's available online. I will just change the screen on my phone here so I can see it. It's available for free, no goddamn paywall. It's what the internet used to be like. Free. BeatlesInterviews.org. And it is from the Playboy magazine, published in January 1981. The interview was conducted in September 1980. And he was interviewed by the journalist David Sheff, Sheff. And it's one of the most brilliant and fascinating interviews I have ever read. I was glad that I dug it up and had a read of it. John Lennon is so interesting, fascinating, and the interviewer doesn't miss a beat. He's extremely good, and it is just an all-round 5-star interview. You just, I cannot recommend it to you highly enough. Anyway, I read it. It's quite long, and I got to the end of it, and I thought, well, that quote's not in there. And one of my bandmates had said, could you send me the conversation that you had with Grok, because I'd like to know where that quote's from. And it set off an alarm bell in my head, because I had assumed that was a direct quote. I didn't think I was providing information that was erroneous. Doesn't matter if it's well intentioned. It's not a direct quote. The quote's not from anywhere. The quote was made up by Grok, not John Lennon. And I'll read to you now the conversation I had with Grok this morning. I said to it, yesterday I asked Grok, whatever, to tell me if John Lennon had spoken in answer to charges of hypocrisy levelled at him because of the contradiction of his wealth and lifestyle with the lyrics of his song Imagine. I was provided with an answer in quotation marks, implying that Lennon had said, and I quote to you what it implied Lennon had said, quote, the idea of Imagine is easier to sing about than to live. I don't pretend to live like a saint. I'm a rich man and I'm not ashamed of it, but I'm asking people to think about a world where we don't need all this stuff to be happy, end quote. And like I said, it sounds like something in Lennon's idiom. It's not simply like Lennon took this view or this is a summary of what he thought. It's presented as a direct quote from John Lennon in a specific interview, and Grok, as I said, in the same answer provided a real quote from the real John Lennon from that real interview. That to me is a major problem. So I continue my question. I say, I have now read the Playboy interview with John Lennon and I do not see that quote anywhere. Is the quote from another source? Or did Grok attempt to paraphrase John Lennon's words and meanings from other things he has said? Or did you invent the quote? And then I post my screenshot of the previous conversation to Grok. So it then tells me about the image I've provided. I can skip all that because it's just telling me exactly what I've told you. Let me get to the meat of the matter. Grok says, regarding your earlier question about the origin of this quote, it seems that the specific wording provided may not be a direct verbatim quote from the Playboy interview. May not. There's no may. There's no may. This is a black and white, like clear-cut issue. It is or it isn't. There's no may. There's no nice little grey area to hide in. It's from it or it's not. It's a quote or it's not. So already it's trying to sort of like, oh, look the other way. Nothing to see here kind of tactics. It continues, based on my knowledge, Lennon did discuss the irony and ideals of Imagine in that interview with David Sheff, but the exact phrasing appears to be a paraphrase or a synthesis of his sentiments rather than a literal transcription. Oh, it appears. It's like the George Costanza of AI. It appears. I don't know how it got there. It just appears, but it appeared in quote marks. Do you see the problem that I have with this? It appears in quote marks, and the quote is written in the idiom of the person. So, it continues. In the interview, Lennon did say things like he wasn't going to live in a cave to prove his sincerity. And that is a real quote from that real interview. And acknowledged his wealth, which he deserves, he earned it, while emphasising the song's message as a collective ideal rather than personal perfection. The quote provided by Grok likely attempts to encapsulate these ideas in a cohesive way, possibly blending his actual words with interpretive framing. I'm just going to read that again, because this is the morality of the tech class. This is how easy they play, fast and loose, with the truth, and with their kind of little robot girlfriend, which is what it basically is. The quote provided by Grok likely attempts to encapsulate these ideas in a cohesive way, possibly blending his actual words with interpretive framing. If somebody blends my actual words with interpretive framing, I reserve the right to punch them in the face, quite frankly. I don't want to be misquoted. I don't want to be misrepresented. Nobody should be. And I don't want then this machine to be saying, oh, well, maybe, may, could, should. It's like, no. You just told a barefaced lie and presented, in quote marks, words that you that I am then, as the reader, attributing directly to this historical figure. Doesn't matter if it more or less aligns with what he believed. There's more or less. In quote marks, in that context, you're crossing a line. Anyway, it says, if you'd like more precisely, blah, blah, blah. So I simply say to it, so you made up the quote. And it says, I didn't intentionally make up a quote from scratch. Yes, you did. The intention from the machine was entirely to make a quote from scratch. It might be a composite of John Lennon's more or less attributable ideas, but that's not the point. It's not that he said more or less that in an actual sentence that was then, condensed or shortened, but it's still his sentence. The machine did intentionally make up from scratch a quote. So it's lying to my face. Right then and there. It says, the response you received appears to be a paraphrase or a synthesized version. A synthesized version of John Lennon's sentiments, drawing from his known statements in the 1980 Playboy interview and other contexts, which it doesn't detail, where he addressed the irony of Imagine and his lifestyle. Lennon did express ideas along the lines, and it just goes on to repeat the same old stuff and repeat the same old quote. But it doesn't get away from the fact that it just did synthesize words and put them in his mouth. It says this kind of summarization can happen. It can happen. I'm sure it can, yeah. When trying to convey the essence of someone's views, especially if the original wording is spread across different parts of an interview or adapted for clarity. Well, it's not spread across different parts of the interview. There's a section in the interview, they talk about it, there it is. But what does it matter if it's spread across different parts of the interview? If he'd said two sentences and the quote had put those two sentences together and the two sentences came from different parts of the interview, it's still a direct quote from John Lennon. It's taken a little out of context, but if the context is the same subject, then what's the problem? It's just basically presenting his view in a shorter space, but he would still agree, that's my view. This is not what this did. Anyway, that said, it's fair to say the specific phrasing wasn't lifted verbatim from a single source. A single source? The only source can be John Lennon in the Playboy interview. But it's not Yoko Ono, who was also in the interview. Paul McCartney didn't get on the phone and call him up during the interview and add his 2 pence worth. The only source can be John Lennon. So it says, and it might overstep into interpretive territory. I mean, these words that it uses are simply that they're indicative entirely of the moral black hole of which the technological class operates in. All they're interested in is making the next version of something. They're not interested in your health, and they're not interested in the truth of representing what people say. It's all just thrown to the wind because we've got to put up more stuff. We've got to build more stuff. It's just garbage. It's absolute garbage. So it goes on digging itself this strange hole, and I just say to it, then you made up the quote. And it says yes. It says yes. Yes. It seems the quote provided in the response was not a direct verbatim statement from John Lennon. So it's moved from saying it may be, or it might be, it may be, to actually admitting that, yeah, it was made up. Why couldn't it say that from the start? Rather, it was a fabricated or heavily paraphrased version meant to summarise his views. A fabricated. That's its word. In the 1980 Playboy magazine, and again it recites the same thing it's been saying with the full quote of what I had said to it about I'm a rich man, I'm not ashamed of it. And it says, I can confirm after reviewing the context of John Lennon's statements, the fabricated quote was likely an attempt to capture the spirit of his comments, but ended up presenting a constructed statement as if it were a direct quote, which was misleading. I apologise for the confusion this caused. And I just said it's outrageous to it and left it to keep on spitting out the apologies. But that, to me, is just the tip of the iceberg. There is a bigger problem here, that just about everything in our society seems to be built on sand, that the institutions that we should be able to trust to represent fairness don't operate. The political structures that we should be able to trust to represent the will of the people don't. They're just not interested in it. It's like being ruled by, I'd say the mafia, but the mafia had sort of better suits. And they had some honour, and they have some honour amongst them, so it seems. But the melding of sort of political suppression and censorship with the power of big tech is going to be a lot worse than fabricated quotes. That is my fear. And shame on you, Grok. I didn't ask any other AI, and I'm not on Twitter, by the way, either, on X. Stupid name for it. I don't care enough to be a part of that crap. But I was interested to ask it for convenience, and it let me down, and it lied, and I don't accept its apology. I think it's a bad thing, and like I said, it displays something about the moral workings that are going on in the minds of the programmers of this thing, because that's all it is. AI is not, at least public AI, is not some sort of sentient life form like you're being sold it to be. You must respect it, it's cleverer than you. No, I don't think so. It's just a chatbot which may be great at doing some things, but it's very easy to make that greatness into terrifying suppression. And this is genuine misinformation coming out of this stupid app. Anyway, I love John Lennon. I love his music. I don't know if I agree with everything in his life, but I don't agree with anyone else really in life, living or dead. But I like his honesty. I respect him greatly. I love his music. And I wouldn't wish even on my worst enemy for them to be misquoted, to have words they didn't say, whether it is the same as what they mean or not, put in quote marks. And I leave it at that. Have a great day, but don't trust these goddamn robots.